Hello, in this video I'm going to explain how the Displace filter works, and this is a filter that allows us to conform the shape of one layer to the surface of another. So it's really useful for combining two images or an image with a shape, as I've done here. You can see this is my sign here that's sitting on top of this surface below, and I've used the Displace filter to rough up the edges of my shape here. If I turn the Displace filter off and on, you can see how it allows me to reshape my top layer here so that it matches the underlying layer. So let's take a look at how this works. This is my starting image here, and before we drop in our other image, what I'm going to do is go to Image and Duplicate to make a duplicate image of this simple texture here. Then what I'm going to do is desaturate with Command or Control Shift and U. That's Command on a Mac, Control on a PC, plus Shift and U to desaturate this image. And I'm also going to blur it slightly. So I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And the reason I'm doing this is just to make the effect a bit smoother. If our displacement map is too sharp, then the results of using the Displace filter might just look a bit too jagged. So that's why we blur it slightly, just enough to blur the detail here. So around about 5 pixels is probably right. I'll hit OK. And I could also, if I like, increase the contrast. So I can hit Command or Control and M for curves, and just make an S-shaped curve like this just to boost the overall contrast. And the reason we do this is because the Displace filter works by recognizing the brightness values of our displacement map. So by increasing the contrast, we can emphasize the effect. So now my displacement map is complete. I need to save it. So I can hit Command or Control and S to bring up my save box, and I just want to give it a name. I can call it map, and then make sure the format down here is set to Photoshop and hit save. Now I can go back to my main image here, and I've got a sign that I'm going to drop in. So I'm just going to go to File, Place Embedded to drop in my image, and it's this image here of a warning sign, and I'll just double click to apply. So now I've got my sign here sitting on top of the underlying texture, and I'm ready to apply my Displace filter. Now notice, because I placed the image using the Place Embedded command, it's come up as a smart object here, and this is quite useful because it means when I apply the Displace filter, it'll appear as a smart filter, which means we can always re-enter the settings if we like. Now if you haven't got a smart object, you can always right click it and convert to smart object before applying the Displace filter. So now let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go to Filter, Distort, Displace, and we get this horizontal and vertical scale here. Let's just try setting them both to 40 for now, and then we want to make sure Stretch to Fit is checked here, and also Repeat Edge Pixels. Then we can hit OK to apply the filter. And then we have to open up our map that we created a moment ago. So we can select that and hit Open. And now you can see how my image has been displaced based on that map that we created earlier. If I toggle that off and on, you can see the difference that makes. So it's quite pronounced at the moment. In fact, it's probably a bit too strong. So what I'm going to do is double click the Displace filter here and try a lower value. So let's perhaps go for 20 on each, and we need to redirect it to our displacement map again, and that's looking a bit more subtle. Now I'd like to blend my sign more naturally in with the rest of the image. So to do this, I could perhaps choose a different blend mode. So I'm going to change this from normal. I'm going to go for one of these blend modes here, color burn, and you can see the effect that has on my image. So now I can judge the displace effect more precisely, and I'm finding it's still not looking quite right. So I'm going to try some more settings here, and we don't really want the horizontal scale here because there's not really much horizontal movement in our underlying surface here. So what I'm going to do is set the horizontal scale to 0. I'm going to bring vertical scale back up to 40, and again redirect it to my displacement map, and that's looking much more natural now. Although there are a couple of places where it's gone slightly wrong, but what I can always do is highlight the smart filter here and then just paint with black using my brush tool here to remove the smart filter effect over areas that we don't want it applying, like that. So now I'm pretty happy with my displace settings here, but I think I could go a bit further with the blending. So what I'm going to do is add a layer mask to my sign layer here. Before I do that, I'm actually going to just hide it for a moment and highlight that background layer, and then I'm going to go to my channels panel. You can find that under Window Channels, and what I'm going to do here is just hold Command or Control and click on the RGB channel here, and this loads the luminosity of the image as a selection. I can use this to give me a layer mask. So now I'm going to highlight that sign layer again and then click the add layer mask icon to convert my selection into a layer mask. And you can see how that works. So now we've added a version of our background image into our layer mask here. I'm going to invert it now with Command or Control and I, and that gives me the effect that I'm after. So now you can see it's blended quite nicely. I think it's a bit too strong, so I'm going to double click the mask thumbnail there and just lower the density until it looks right, somewhere around about there I think. I'm happy with that. And I think we could perhaps finish off just by darkening our overall image. So I'm going to click the create adjustment layer icon here. Let's perhaps go for curves and just drag down on the curve line to darken our image like that. And that's my finished combined photo. So there we go. That's a quick introduction to the Displace filter and how we can use it to conform the shape of one layer to the surface of another.